how fishing stories go. But when I was a small child and we lived in Montana and state of Washington, my father was an avid freshwater fisherman. He loved to fly fish, he loved to lake fish, and so forth. But he never really had any stories, he told me, except for one. He said that at one time they were way north in Idaho, they were fishing and they were unloading their boat into the lake on the ramp, and as it went into the water, a rainbow trout jumped out of the lake, flopped around, landed in their boat. And it was the only fish they caught all day. Now, I heard some groans and some moans. It is a fishing story, and I shared it for two reasons. One is, it's the only fishing story I got. And the second is, it kind of leads us into today's scripture. Because we're talking about fishing. That's the setting, that's the context, that's the scenery. Jesus is at the north end of the Sea, Luke says, of Gennesaret, or the Sea of Galilee. We know it's early morning because the fishermen are there cleaning their equipment and tying up their boats. It's been a long, long night. Jesus is preaching, and the crowd is so enamored and involved and large that it begins to push him towards the shoreline. And he gets this idea that he would just use a boat that's there as his pulpit. So he climbs into Simon's boat, which was most accessible, and he sits down and begins or concludes his message. When he's done, he turns to Simon and kind of begins a conversation as they resume cleaning up their equipment. He says, "Oh, worked all night? Yeah. No luck? No. Well, maybe you didn't do it right." And Peter, being, of course, a professional and long-time fisherman, must have looked at Jesus with a bit of, he was already frustrated. There must have been a sense of like, okay, who are you? And Jesus said, well, go ahead, try again. But this time, go out in the deep water and throw your net on the other side of the boat. So Peter does this probably if for no other reason than to prove him wrong. And yet, to his surprise, when they get out there, the catch is so abundant that they have to call for help, and their nets, as they're bringing in all these fish, nearly sinks. Well, the net almost breaks, the boat almost sinks. Peter says, man, this is unbelievable. And he turns and he says to Jesus, how in the world? And Jesus calmly responds, now, if you think that was something, Peter, come follow me, join me, and you'll really catch some big ones. And Peter must have thought, what? What's he talking about? And that's when things get interesting. At least for me, they get interesting in understanding and interpreting this text. Because we know this story, we were taught it a long time ago, probably in Sunday school. Only the version we were taught came from the Gospel of Mark. And what Mark says is, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Okay, y'all know it. It's not what Luke says. And I think it's significant to understand this. Luke has a little different twist. And when you translate it from the Greek, instead of saying, come follow me and I will make you fishers of people, what Luke says is, come and follow me, and what you will catch will be alive. Now, you have to think about that, because what fishermen do is they catch things that are alive and then they die. That's the way the process works. Luke flips it around. Luke is in essence saying, you're going to catch people who are dead and you're going to give them life. You're going to make them alive. Now, the living, the life that Jesus is talking about is not simply your heart beating or your lungs expanding and contracting. That's not what it's about. What Luke, I think, is telling us is, I'm going to give you something so wonderful that your commitment to it and your passion towards it and your motivation, it's just going to be amazing. You'll want to spread the hope and the happiness that you can get. Just follow me. Trust me. You're going to have the task and the opportunity of rejuvenating, renewing society and faith, and helping the world to be reborn. You know, that kind of thing is what motivates you. That's the kind of thing that's worth getting up for. That Jesus was giving them a purpose that was amazing. You know, rather than getting up every day, putting the nets, going out, you know, it's the old routine. You know, just ask people, what'd you do today, Dad? Well, work is work. Jesus says, you can be something more. And so they were so incredibly inspired that it says they dropped their nets, hook, line, and sinker, in order to follow this prophet. And I would submit to you that doesn't mean that they left their homes, they left their families, they left everything. I think what we are intended to take from that is they said, yes, we'll leave behind our old habits, our old ways of living, our old ways of understanding to try something new. That what was offered to them was so exciting and just such a wonderful opportunity that they were willing to take a chance and follow him. Have you ever experienced a moment or an event in your life like that? A time when you were so enthralled, so involved, you lost track of time, you lost track of any pains or aches you had in your body, you lost track of what you have to do tomorrow because the moment was so great, the experience was so enthralling that it consumed you. You dropped everything you were doing to watch or listen. Have you ever been a part of a cause or an activity so inspiring that the multitudes became one? Perhaps a team event or a sports activity, maybe a charity or work that was so captivating, a project at work that was so captivating that it stayed with you forever. You ever had that? An experience that was so powerful for years later, you remember it, you go back to it, you feed on it. You take something from it, and if you could repeat it or recreate it, you'd do anything to have it again. That's what these gentlemen, Peter and his crew, I think felt. They sensed that there was an opportunity for purpose and a well-being for their lives that you just don't get from the everyday. You just don't get from temporal things and short-lived, personally focused activities. But you do get when you are, as people like to say, all in. You're all in. And when you're all in, it's something you want to share. You want other people to experience it as well. This past week, I came across an article that had the title, "Self-Esteem is the Problem Behind All Problems." I suspected I knew what the article was going to tell me before I ever read it, but I read it anyway. And the conclusion was that, and this is so obvious, but the conclusion was, after you got through all the psychological jargon, most people don't feel very good about themselves. That most people try to act or look or pretend, but most of us, we got some things that bother us. You know, we really are very insecure in many ways. And when you're insecure, other people can identify those places and use them and manipulate us and influence us. The article said that we have our perspective and our attitudes on life by age 5. And of course, we received those from those who received that, or were taught that. We got our values and our priorities from our parents, our schools, society, and our peers. And culture uses this, culture knows this, and they make us feel that we are poorer than we deserve, that we are dumber than we really are, that we are less beautiful than the retail industry says we should be, all of which makes us dissatisfied and unhappy with our lives. And with artificial intelligence and technology, they're getting better and better and better at identifying our Achilles heel that they might play on our insecurities to sell us something that we think is going to make it all go away. And maybe it does for a short time, but the fix is temporary. So what we do is we buy into that this day, and tomorrow we wait for the next bandwagon to jump on. You know, it's like owning a car that you're going to drive around, only you choose to drive it in a cul-de-sac. So you go round and round and round, and you're driving, but you aren't going anywhere. We bought into that. It's like Groundhog Day. Again, again, again. And what Jesus offers Peter and his crew is the opportunity to invest their talents and their skills in something more and greater and more lasting than the routine of day-to-day survival. Jesus offers them a movement greater than any one of them aimed at a goal that could be described as nothing short of eternal. I think that's all what we all long for, isn't it? Something that makes our lives valuable in a very tangible and yet intangible way. You can't buy it, you can't own it, you can only feel it because what you are doing, where you are headed, and how you are living has a lasting purpose and meaning. If anybody ever wondered what my favorite part of ministry is in my job description, there's many things I've learned to do and some things I like to do, some things I don't like to do. But what is your favorite? What are you passionate about? And I have to say that one of my goals is to finally reach the point where I achieve what everybody says ministers do anyway, and that's work 1 hour a week. I think that one's doable. But in all sincerity, I would say preaching. I like to preach. I love to listen to preachers. I love to read sermons. I love the art involved in trying to say something that meets such diversity. I have a passion for the art of this. And it has been affirmed over the years by individuals, some church members, some visitors who in the business world have told me, if you ever get tired of being a minister, come talk to me. You could make a lot of money in the business world as a salesperson or motivational speaker. And I have a place for you. Which I obviously never did, but I have to be honest, I have thought about it from time to time. But, the truth is, if I have a gift in that regard, and if it comes through, it's not just transferable. It's not just transferable. It's about why you do it and for whom you do it. What are the reasons? What are the motivations? What drives you? What are your end goals? And I engage in the discipline of preparation, not because there's some bonus waiting for me, but because somehow, some way, I hope that I can be a vehicle or an instrument through which God can work and speak to you. I hope that somehow my vulnerability week after week becomes your empowerment in ways I will never know. Providing insights, thinking about life from angles that you never thought about before, alternative perspectives of living or how we could live, challenging, comforting when it's necessary, but most of all, trying to promote a fuller life. I can't guarantee I will achieve this, and believe me, there are some Sundays that I stand up here and say, well, just shoot me. This doesn't sound the way I thought it would. But friends, it's the motivation behind what we do. That's the experience, that's the flame, that's the spark that drives us. It's the fuel that makes us what we are. You know, the world has enough bad news without people of faith chiming in. Society has an overabundance of naysayers and negative contributors without those who believe in a life-changing message joining that club. It was Mother Teresa who said, joy is prayer, joy is strength, joy is love, joy is the net of love by which you catch souls. Joy is the net of love by which you catch souls. And so what Jesus says to me as I read this passage in Luke, Jesus says, let go of your old ways and give some new ways a chance. Old habits are hard to break, so it won't be easy, but it will be good. You won't always be loved, but those who love and love you will do so deeply. And I guarantee that if you keep the first things first, that even on your worst days, your net will still be full. And so the title of the sermon, Dead or Alive, you choose.